Hey, what's up there? It's Brian Goulet of GouletPens.com here, shooting another Goulet Q&A. This is the 52nd one that I've done, October 10th of 2014. A couple of things on the personal side. Katie here, Katie Sullivan, she's no longer Katie Sullivan. She actually got married this past weekend. She works in our fulfillment area. So she was off, got married in the mountains, gorgeous. It was awesome. So we're super excited for her. Also, Randall, who is our assistant fulfillment manager, he is, his wife is currently like pretty much in labor right now. So we're like waiting for this baby to drop. So that's super exciting. It's their first kid. And it's just really neat to be like a part of these really awesome, like fulfilling kind of life goal things, you know, for our team. So that's really exciting. A lot of good vibes going all around here. And I also wanted to touch on, so I mentioned, what was it, last week that Rachel and I were going to be in New York at this event called Business Gets Personal. And the event was really cool. So it was a one-day event that Seth Godin, Dave Ramsey, and Gary Vaynerchuck put on. And it was insane. I mean, it was like a world-class thing. You know, they opened up with like a jazz band from Juilliard. It was in the Jazz Theater at Lincoln Center. It was just really cool event. The keynotes were awesome. I totally like jived with everything that they were saying. We're doing a lot of things right around here at Goulet. But one thing that I couldn't talk about ahead of time was the fact that there was a segment of the event called the Hot Seat. And what they did is there were hundreds of companies that attended this thing. And they selected just 2 companies out of everybody that was attending to be put in what they called the hot seat, which is basically they sent a video team to record your company, shoot a little bio, and then put you up on stage with Seth, Dave, and Gary, and analyze your company. You get to ask them some questions, and they dive in deep to your specific situation. So we found out about this event back in April when they first kind of posted it, and we signed up, and I didn't know what the process was to get in that hot seat, but I was like, I have to get in there because our company's like a poster child for these 3 guys because, you know, Seth's book, The Dip, was so influential. Tribes was influential. Dave Ramsey's EntreLeadership and Financial Peace have influenced what we do around here. Gary's book, Crush It, you know, that is the reason I shoot videos at all. And then his jab, 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 right hook is continuing to form the way that we interact on social media. So all 3 of these guys have been so influential in the way that we do things at Goulet Pens. I was just like, I don't know how to get in this hot seat, but I have to. I like called and emailed everybody in Dave Ramsey's company that I could get a hold of and told them my story and was like, I have to get in there. Please send it out to whoever is helping to make these decisions. And come to find out, yeah, we got selected. And I found out about that back in July, but I couldn't say anything. They sent their video team out here, 3 guys, Dave, Davo, and Ben, super nice guys. And they shot our company for like 2 days to put this bio together so to show up on stage at the event. So that was on Thursday last week. And it was completely mind-blowing. Just being at the event, it was really cool to get to meet these guys in person. I got to talk to each one of them one-on-one to thank them and tell them a little bit of my story and how they helped to influence the way we do things here. And honestly, that is the reason I wanted to go to the event, was just to talk to each one of those guys, shake their hands, and thank them for what they've done. Even though they didn't like specifically know that they were helping me, it was so influential and it's completely changed my life as a result and the lives of, you know, 25 of us here. So that's pretty wild that event even happened, let alone the fact that we got to be featured in that hot seat. So it was pretty ridiculous. Rachel had some health stuff going on, so it was kind of even rough just to get up there, to fly up there in New York and get there, and to even get into the event was a bit of a struggle for us, honestly. So once we actually got in the hot seat, it was kind of like almost a little bit of a relief that we like made it there at all. But then once we actually got in there, I was initially thinking it was going to be kind of this like, hey, you know, pat on the back, you guys are doing it so good, congratulations, look at the example that they are. No, that's not really what it was. I mean, it's called the hot seat, and they had us sitting on red stools, you know, and so it was, yeah, it got a little heated, you know. They weren't mean or anything, but they definitely like got in on some hard truths, asking us questions about like, you know, why are you guys complaining about these issues with growth when you're consciously making decisions about growing? And we were like, oh crap, you're right. Like, we really have kind of complained a little too much, and you know, we really shouldn't feel bad about the consequences that are coming from the results of decisions that we're consciously making. It's like, we really just need to kind of own up to this. So it was really nice. It was honoring yet humbling at the same time being there. And we didn't have like one major epiphany being there, but a couple of things that I definitely took away was like, you know, these guys, they are not perfect. You know, they are definitely not to be idolized. They're just guys that know themselves really well. They are really good at what they do, and the things that they aren't good at doing, they get help from other people to do those things. That's pretty much the big secret, is learning how to delegate and getting other people to help you, and then you focusing on the things that you're exceptional at doing. Knowing yourself really well, knowing your flaws, and working around those. And I kind of like knew that in my head, but I still I over-involve myself in certain things around here. It's kind of hard not to when you're coming from being a small business, you know, husband and wife team, you have to do everything. And then as your company grows, your natural tendency is to still want to have your hands in every little detail. But, you know, we got a huge crew here now, and they're very competent. They're very good. I trust them. And, you know, learning to let go of certain things and focus more on the things that I should be doing, like shooting videos and stuff like this, you know, stuff that only I can do. That is something that we are really kind of taken away from that. And so, yeah, and just kind of embracing that, you know what, failure is a part of the experience. You know, I'm very futuristic thinking. You know, I'm always looking towards the future, and sometimes, even as successful as our company is and it may appear to be to you, I'm still always like striving for more. And so for me to say like, you know what, it's okay if I don't get this video shot today. It's okay if I didn't get these things off my to-do list today. I'm not gonna feel bad about that, because I know I did my best today. And having that kind of contentment is something that really comes with a lot of maturity, and I'm finally starting to get there, I think. I'm starting to trust everybody on my team, and they really want to help out. A phenomenal team, and so we really grew a lot, I think, as a result of this experience. It definitely wasn't like you know, oh yeah, praise Goulet, you know, anything like that. It wasn't like that at all. It was actually like really introspective kind of experience going through all that, but anyway, so that was just kind of a summary of my takeaways from that event. It was an incredible honor to be there. Super excited. The Dave Ramsey team, they are a class act all the way. You know, if you've read Entree Leadership or anything, they say that, he says like that's his playbook for his company. And like every person on his team that I ran into, I was like, how long did it take you to get hired? What's your policy on this? What's it like to actually work there? And like, I was kind of testing at least with like a dozen or so different people, and you know, it's pretty legit. Like, they use that book as their playbook. Like, that is not just something that he wrote to try kind of be a bestseller. It's legit. So it's awesome to have kind of a role model that's like the real deal like that. We've modeled a lot of what we do here around kind of Dave Ramsey and his book, and Seth and Gary and some of the other you know, leaders out there that are doing these things. So I'm kind of like picking and choosing the best of what we have and interpreting it for our company. But little insight into kind of what makes us tick. But it was really, really just cool to be at that thing and to get to rub elbows with some of those world-class people. It was a lot of fun. So that said, got a lot of good questions for this week. Don't know if I'll get to all of them, but I'll give it a shot. I think I got like 45 minutes on my battery here, so we will see. I need to just get a new battery anyway, but whatever, I'll make the most of it. Okay, so first question I have is from Austin Malone on YouTube. Can you give us the deal on Organic Studio? I thought Organic Studio would have blossomed into something great. That's a great question, because man, organics just kind of disappeared, and we're actually out of bottles now. Like, they're gone. It's just gone, you know. So basic rundown: Organic Studio was started by Tyler Thompson. He was a chemistry student at the University of Maryland. He was in college, you know, and he wanted to just start making ink. So he did that as kind of like a way to like part-time income kind of thing. You know, he had worked at the retail store up in Maryland, Bertram's Inkwell, and had kind of been familiar with fountain pens. So as a chemist, familiar with fountain pens, he thought making ink seems kind of work. you know, and so he started out just kind of like sending stuff to people on FPN and kind of grassroots, like kind of getting his word out there. That was several years ago. And then we were his first online retail account a couple of years ago. He only had 4 colors and was still kind of figuring things out. So we picked him up, but then he like reformulated some stuff and we dropped it and said, hey, you know, take some time, kind of figure your stuff out. He was, you know, getting caught up in school and all that stuff. So we were like, oh, go ahead and figure it out and we'll talk to you again later. So what happened earlier this year in 2014 is he had come out with a lot of new colors. His formulas had kind of stabilized and everything. And he reached out to us and was like, hey, you know, you guys, if you're, you know, if there's no hard feelings or anything, why don't we go ahead and you know, talk about picking it back up. And so we considered it and we were like, yeah, you know what, the reviews are good. You know, it seems like he's got his stuff figured out. You know, he's going to be graduating soon, so maybe he'll kind of do it full time. We'll give it a shot. So we did. It's been pretty good. You know, he's come out a lot of cool colors. It's got a pretty good following. But what ended up happening is he graduated this past, you know, May or whatever. And then he is going to grad school in New York City. So, you know, we didn't know that when we picked up the brand. You know, we just kind of didn't know what his future held. And you know, it's totally cool if he wants to get higher education, especially being in that field, you know. But he was planning on continuing doing the ink making. But because of, I guess, where he got his grad, you know, student thing, and he's going to be living in like a studio apartment up in New York, you know, it's not really a lot of space and his time constraints and stuff. He's just not going to be able to continue to make the ink as he was originally planning. Once he kind of like really got like right up into the point where he was going to school, he was like, hey, this is just not going to be able to happen. So he basically reached out to us and said, hey guys, I've got some ink left. I'm not going to be able to keep this thing up. I thought I would be able to, but I'm not. Would you be interested in just kind of taking the rest of my stock and just kind of telling everybody what happened? So that's basically what we did. We came out with a newsletter a couple weeks ago and explained kind of, hey, it's going away. You know, we picked up everything that was left, and once it's gone kind of thing. So that is basically what happened. We've talked to him and asked him if he planned on picking it back up, and I think because of his school workload in grad school, he's not going to have the time to do it while he's in school, which is, you know, I got to respect that he knows what he's getting into there. You know, we asked him if he would plan on doing it again once he graduated. He said he would definitely be open to it, but it's probably never going to be like a full-time thing. You know, it's not like he's going to graduate and then start a full-blown ink company and try to grow it. It's just going to be kind of a hobby thing for him just because he's passionate about it. So I don't really know what the future is going to hold there. It's hard to say. It's going to be a couple of years away anyway, but that's the situation. So if you have any organics inks, you know, what's out there is all that it ever will be. So for the foreseeable future. So hopefully that clears some things up. Next question, Roberto Alonso on YouTube. Hi Brian, how do you fill a fountain pen with an ink bladder, for example a Pilot Metropolitan, when the ink bottle is half empty for tall bottles? I'm finding it difficult to do it in a clean way. Any tricks? Okay, so you're not talking about like being able, like the ink level or anything. You're just, when I first read it, that's what I thought you were talking about, like how do you actually get the ink into the pen. I think what you're talking about though is when you got a taller bottle in here and you have to squeeze the bladder, you have to get your hands pretty far down on the pen, and if you have to get way down in the bottle, your fingers kind of get in the way on the top of the bottle. There's a couple of things you can do. You can take the bottle, you know, I've got a bottle here, and you know, this bottle's not super tall, Monteverde, but you know, it's tall enough. So if you were trying to fill in here, you know, there's a couple things you do. You can kind of tilt the bottle and then fill it that way, so you're not having to get your fingers all the way down in there. That is kind of like the easiest, most straightforward solution. You gotta watch out, make sure you're not gonna spill it or whatever. But because it's a squeeze converter and not a twist converter, you can actually fill it with one hand as opposed to the twist where you really kind of need two hands to do it. So you can hold the bottle with one hand, squeeze it with the other. That's one thing you can do. You can also use an ink syringe, you know, so you can actually take the converter off, use an ink syringe, suck the ink up out of the bottle and just fill the converter directly, pop it on there and keep on going. That's really nice. Even if your ink level gets really, really low, essentially you can get every drip out of the bottle with an ink syringe. And that's a nice way to do it. And then another thing that you can do is if you have any ink sample vials, like, do I have any here? Yeah. So if you got any ink sample vials like this, you can always decant the ink into ink sample vials, which actually is not a terrible practice anyway, especially if you have a large bottle of ink. Then if you are decanting ink into a sample vial, then when you're refilling your pen, you're just dipping it into this little sample instead of dipping your pen with its dust fibers and paper fibers and all this nastiness, dried ink and stuff like that you may have, unless you exercise like perfect hygiene, pen hygiene like I know you all do. You know, if you are decanting your ink into a smaller vial, then you are not basically contaminating your bottle over and over again as you're dipping your pen into it every time you fill. So nice little added bonus there, but that's another option for you, would be to use it into a sample vial. So you got several different options there. You could also refill a cartridge if you wanted to. You know, there's all different kinds of things you could do, but hopefully that helps you out. All right, Bloodlust 2012 on YouTube. I'm a student and I carry up to 4 pens sometimes with various colors for note-taking. What's a good yet not too expensive 4 to 6 pen carrying case? I've looked in a few places such as Amazon and they're either too expensive or are cheaply made. Yeah, you got to be careful with some pen cases. I've heard of some pen cases that, you know, are made with some chemicals and stuff, especially if they're like fake leather, not fake leather, but if they're like leather, you know, made overseas and stuff like that. You got to be careful about how they're made. Because, you know, some of the chemicals that are used to tan some of those leathers can be harmful to certain types of metal and stuff like that on your pens. I even had somebody that reached out to me over email not long ago that had bought a cheap Chinese case, and whatever chemical or whatever that was used actually like caused like a discoloration on their Lamy Safaris, like in the plastic. Very weird. That's the only time I've ever heard of that. But you know, you just got to watch out when you're buying like super cheap stuff, especially if you're sticking like hundreds of dollars of pens in it. If you're getting a cheap case, you know, you don't want to ruin any of your pens with the case. That's kind of defeats the purpose of the case, right? So, okay, the cases that I'm most familiar with, I think probably one of the more economical solutions for you that are really good quality is Nock. I don't have Nock on my website yet. They are not distributing through retailers yet. For those of you familiar with Brad Dowdy, the pen addict, he helped to start that company, Nock. And so it's, I actually think I might have one of those around. I don't know if I can get over there because my mic is going to kind of tie me in place. Oh, where is it? Here it is. Oh, let's see. Okay, I've got a bin of random stuff. Yeah, I actually have a couple of Nock cases. Now don't look at the colors here because these are kind of pre-production samples that I got. But Nock, you know, he's got several different things. Like he's got a pen flap thing where you stick your pens in here. These are like kind of a ballistic nylon material. Really durable stuff. He's got another one that's a little more of a roll, so it's got like a couple pens and a notebook or something like that. Again, I don't know if these are actually like his finalized products. The one that's really cool though is this pen roll. So it's like a little pencil case type thing with a roll that you can stick the pens in. These are pretty cool. And these are all relatively affordable. So you can buy them direct from Nock right now. There's a free plug for you, Brad. I don't even benefit from that right now, but these products are really cool and I'm pretty excited about them. I'm kind of waiting for him to get his production levels up so that we can carry him at Goulet, but we definitely have plans to. We're just kind of waiting on Brad to get his levels where he needs to be to support that. But that I think would be a great solution for you. As far as what products that I don't have a ton of pen cases. Aston stuff is the stuff that I use the most personally. Aston makes a 6 pen case and a 10 pen case. The crazy thing is the 10 pen's a lot more popular. It's, I guess, a more standard cut of leather or something that they have. So if you get the 6 pen case, it actually costs you more than the 10. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, why would you pay more for something that holds less pens? So I use the 10. It's $64. It's not super cheap, but it's great quality. You know, American made through and through, and you can have these little loops in here. And actually, it's got some small little loops, so you can actually kind of fit 14 pens in here if you really try. So it's kind of neat on there. Is it 14? Is that right? Yeah, you can fit 14 pens in there if you really cram them in. So, I mean, that would be my other solution. It's going to be more expensive than the Nock stuff, but that is something that I have available for you right now. So, there you go. All right, at MobyProf on Twitter. What's the timetable of the TWSBI Vac Mini? By Christmas, please? Oh, man. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm excited about the Vac Mini. It's basically a mini version of the Vac 700, for those of you not familiar with it. It's been slated to come out for a little while. I still don't have a date on it yet. It could come by Christmas. I'd kind of be a little surprised if it did, because I would have thought I would have heard something about it by now if it was impending that soon. I think the TWSBI Eco is supposed to come out before the Vac Mini, so I haven't even really heard anything about that yet. I think it'd be more realistic to see the Eco before Christmas, but I don't know. All these dates keep changing, and you know, check out TWSBI's Facebook page. That's probably the most accurate place for that updated info. All right, Sarah M on Ink Nouveau asked, does Clairefontaine make French rule pads? I use a lot of pads at work and I just fell in love with the Sayez rule. So Sayez rule pads would be awesome. Yeah, that would be cool. They do make them. Clairefontaine makes a lot of notebooks. Their French catalog is like this thick. It's insane. It's like 8,000 products or something. I'm not even joking. All kinds of stuff. They do make, you know, top staple bound tear-out pads, just like kind of Rhodia pad style, with the French rule. However, they're not imported into the US. So it's not something that I can easily get my hands on. You have to buy them in huge quantities, and the price fluctuates all the time because of the euro and stuff like that. So it's not something that I can very feasibly stock. So the things that I have that are French ruled, I have 2 different sizes of a side staple bound. I have 2 different sizes of a side cloth bound and 2 different sizes of a side wire bound. That's the only thing I have in that SEGA's ruling. All right, Ravena J on Facebook. Is it easy to swap the nibs from Pilot pens? For example, I'm planning to buy a Pilot Stargazer, but I love Pilot's soft medium nib over the standard Pilot medium nib, and I would like to see about getting one to swap it out. Is this even possible? Generally, the nibs are pretty easy to remove. Some of them, it helps to have the Goulet grip, if you're familiar with that at all. You know, a piece of rubber here that you can use to pull the nibs out. That helps a lot, especially with certain pens like the Falcon and the Vanishing Point. So really, I haven't come across a Pilot pen that I can think of where I haven't been able to pull the nib out of it. They are pretty strict in their verbiage for the warranty about not pulling the nib out of the custom 823. So that's the only one that I've been really weary about doing. I'm sure it's possible though, because all the rest of their pens are friction fit. You can just pull them right out. I'm not going to do it on this one right now because it's got ink in it. Well, what the heck, you know, who cares? I'll get ink on my fingers. It's like a point of pride anyway. So yeah, just right there, bam, pulled it right out. So if you've got a Metropolitan, a Penmanship, 78G, Prera, I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm missing. Plumix, those all swap. The nibs are exactly the same on those. There's different sizes and stuff, but the nibs themselves are the same shape and all that. You can pull them out, swap them, whatever. Getting spare nibs though, that's a different situation. Pilot does not regularly sell, except on the Vanishing Point. They don't regularly sell. I'm not even gonna wipe it off. I'm just gonna get it all inky. Isn't that beautiful? Diamond Marine on this one. I love that color. So yeah, okay. Who else you know that does that? Doesn't even bother wiping it off. So yeah, if you could get the spare nibs, I know Pilot offers special order spare nibs for the Falcon. It costs like 60% of the cost of the pen because it's not just the nib, it's the whole nib, feed, grip, like that whole front section of the pen. So you're paying like, you know, almost enough to buy another pen, sort of. So we don't special order them a lot. It's definitely not worth it for us to stock them regularly because we get requests so seldom. But you know, the Stargazer, yeah, like the Stargazer, I don't know what other pen uses that exact same size nib. I know it seems similar in size to like the Custom 74 and the Custom Heritage 92. I don't know for a fact that those swap out. I can't remember if they do. Honestly, my memory is failing me. If anything, I want to say the Stargazer's nib might be a little smaller than those, just because that's a smaller pen. But in general, though, if you're talking about a soft medium nib, I can't special order. I don't think I can special order a soft medium nib except on the Falcon. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you can get available over in Japan. Pilot offers more stuff in Japan than they do in the US. You have to kind of hunt and peck to get it. And then when you're talking about parts and pieces and stuff, I don't think that's generally something that they really understand over there, the Japanese kind of culture. Like Americans, like we want like every single thing, like if we want it, we want it. We want every single part, piece, swap it out, do whatever, all that kind of thing. That's like not unusual for us at all. But for most of the other companies that I deal with, Japanese, European companies, they're like, why would you want a spare nib? You know, like they kind of don't understand. But like a lot of them come around, like Lamy does it and, you know, something like that. But other ones, they just like, they do not understand why you would want to swap a nib. So it's not something that I would really get my hopes up about being able to find. Sorry. All right, at Twaznek, Twitter, does the Schaefer 100 and 300 have the same nib? I'm pretty sure they do. You definitely need a Goulet grip type thing to get the nibs out of those pens. They are tough. And you got to be careful because those fins on the feed are easy to, you know, yank and bend the fins on those feeds and ruin the feed. So be careful with that. But you're not really asking me about swapping. Maybe I'm still kind of on the same, the last question. But do they have the same nib? I believe so. I don't like have that confirmed as a fact, but from my own observations, they look the same size. I believe it would make sense to me that they would put the same nib on those pens, especially if they look the same. For economies of scale, for production purposes, I would imagine it would be the same nib. You can check out the Nib Nook. They look very similar. So, and you can look in the Pen Plaza as well. Another tool I have that has pictures of the nibs, you know, the open pens side by side. Looks exactly the same. Scott Rodgers on Ink Nouveau, can you recommend a bottled ink that comes closest to dollar bill green? That's a cool question, Scott, and I've never been asked that before. Never. So that's impressive that in 5 years of doing this business, I've never been asked for someone to match a color to a dollar bill. That's the good news. The bad news is I don't really have a deadlock match for a color for a dollar bill. I honestly don't. Someone pointed out in the, forgive me, I didn't look up your name, but someone pointed out in the comments under your post there on Ink Nouveau that Organic Studios' Gregor Mendel was the closest match, but that color is discontinued now and it's gone. So that's kind of a useless piece of information. But yo, I found a close match, but you can't get it. So sorry. I would say, you know, I looked in the swap shop and I tried to find one that was close. I really got nothing. There's nothing that's that light. If you're going for like the darker color in the green, you might have a little more luck, but I honestly couldn't find anything that was really even that close. I think if it was, it would actually have a kind of a hard time showing up on the paper. Some of the lighter greens that were out there, like Diamond Vert Olive and stuff like that, they were more of an olivey green with a lot of yellow to it. So that might be something you could look into, but as far as exact color for a dollar bill, I really didn't have anything. So sorry to not really answer your question, but you know, if anyone else out there has experience with an ink that would come close to a dollar bill, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And I'm sure Scott would appreciate that too. All right, at Sergeant Stretch on Twitter, can I swap the nib on my 580 with any number 6 nib without getting a TWSBI nib and section unit? No, you can't. The 580 does not take a number 6 nib, so you will fail miserably if you try to do that. It takes a number 5 nib, so that's what you would need to swap it out. Only the TWSBI VAC 700 and the discontinued Micarta use a number 6 size nib. So if you're using the 580, you're going to need to get either that TWSBI nib unit section or whatever, or get a number 5 nib. Edison makes a number 5 nib, and that's all that I can think of that has swappable number 5s that sells them separately. Yeah, and the TWSBI Mini uses a number 4 nib, so that one's even smaller. So that you really need to get the TWSBI section. So sorry about that. Wanted to clear that up for you though. All right, Adam K on Facebook. What's your favorite ink that's no longer in production? That's another question that I haven't really been asked before. So I had to think about that one for a minute. Because actually I haven't really had a lot of experience with discontinued inks. I mean, there have been some here and there, and I guess, you know, organics, there could be a lot of those now. But I would have to say, and for those of you that are like hardcore pen folks that have been around for a while, Parker Penman Sapphire. I mean, that ink gets talked about a lot. It's kind of like an urban legend status at this point because it's been gone for so long. I think it was discontinued in 1994. I mean, I was in 4th grade when that happened, so I was not familiar with the ink as it happened. I did have somebody that sent me part of a bottle. I used it just very sparingly because I did not have much of the ink, but it's awesome. It looks awesome. It looks a lot like Diamine Majestic Blue, which is one of my favorite inks. Noodler's Ottoman Azure, Private Reserve Electric DC Blue. Those are ones that I always recommend to kind of replace that. It's a dark blue with a heavy like red kind of purple sheen to it. Looks sweet. But that would have to be the one that kind of takes the cake for me. One that would be a kind of a close second would be the old formula of Omos Blue. They changed their formula a couple of years ago. It used to be like a deep blue, kind of like Parker Penman Sapphire. It is not quite as deep anymore. They changed it a couple of years ago. Still a nice blue, but the older formula, which I have a bottle of it, thank you, is something, it's not really discontinued, but it was reformulated. So that would have to be my answer there. Cool. All right. Tanmay B on Facebook. What's the best but cheapest everyday writing pen with a fine or extra fine nib? Well, that would have to be, for me, the Pilot Metropolitan. You know, you can get other ones, though. I mean, like the Platinum desk pen it's not like, you said everyday writing pen. It's a kind of a long, like, you know, script-looking pen. And so that one's not as good as a carry-around pen. It's obviously called the desk pen, so, you know, whatever. But that one's got an extra fine nib on it. It's like 12 bucks or something, super cheap. Cool pen, very fine line. But for the everyday carry around here, this right here is my Pilot Metropolitan fine nib. And it's pretty dang fine. So for 15 bucks with a converter and all that, you know, it's almost impossible to beat. There's some other cheap pens. They don't have fine nibs, but like the Jinhao pens are pretty decent. I've only got them in a medium nib, but I think they do make fine, but we got to buy huge quantities of these pens. And I just wasn't so sure about what the quality of the fine nib would be. Maybe it would be okay, but you know, we're pretty locked in on the mediums at this point. And then the Pilot Varsity, I mean, that's a medium nib as well, but you know, for $3, it's a pretty sweet little pen. Next question. Ben C on Facebook. Hey Brian, love the videos. It is always nice to see the amount of energy and passion you have for what you do. Yes. Any advice on getting into the ink making business, or just advice on starting your own business in general? What are the pros and cons of being a small business owner these days? Boy, okay, could do a whole Q&A just on that question right there. All right, so let me chop it up, break it down a little bit. You asked about getting into the ink making business. You could kind of follow what Noodlers and Organic Studio, you know, Tyler, have done. Even though Tyler's not in it anymore, that's a kind of a personal situation with his education. But the way that he got into the business was pretty legit. You know, he basically, I think that he really did it right. You know, just kind of like Nathan did back in the 2003 or whatever when he started Noodlers. The way to start it out is through grassroots. You know, you start making ink, test it, because the thing that I've seen over and over again is when new inks and stuff are coming out, if the dyes aren't thoroughly tested and given time to see how they hold up, crazy things can happen with different filtering methods and different reactions of dyes and dye components that change from manufacturers. If they're not stabilized, that'll immediately just like kill your brand recognition. So start out slow, do a lot of testing, make sure you really know what you're doing from a chemical standpoint, right? Because there's a lot of stuff with biocides and lubricants and other things that you need to understand before getting into that business. Once you do that, start coming out with some stuff. Look at the other inks that are out there. Look to come up with some stuff that's unique. Don't just make the same kind of crap that every other company is making, boring, whatever, you know, royal blue ink that 50 other companies have and it looks exactly the same. You might sell some, but do something cool, you know? It's like the reason that Noodlers and Organics were getting talked about is because they do these interesting things. They come out with new colors, they have themes, they have history, they have meaning behind their creation, they have chemical properties that are unique. That is what is getting people talking these days. So try and find something that makes you unique when you're starting that. And then when you get into it, you know, make sure that you got your bottles nailed down, you got a nice presentation and all that kind of stuff. You know, look to come up with something that's buzzworthy, because the way that you're going to get into it is by getting people to talk about you online. You know, you're not going to go to these established brick and mortars and say, hey, I'm a little startup, can you carry my stuff? No, they don't really want to hear anything about that. And honestly, you know, I don't want to hear anything about that either until you're stabilized. You know, if you're trying to get into the ink making business, I'm going to push you down and push you away for a long time until you can figure your stuff out. Because I know from experience now with Tyler, with his organics the first time around, and then with Scribal Workshop, who came up and then kind of went away, getting into ink making is tough. Getting the brand recognition is tough, getting your formulas nailed down, finding your place, getting your bottles, getting all your labels and design stuff stabilized. That just takes a long time. And for me, for the kind of stuff I'm doing, shooting videos, pictures, social media, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, I need your product to be stabilized before I and pretty much any other retailer will want to carry your stuff. You know, and I don't want to have a completely unknown person who comes on. It's like, yeah, I'll totally just do all your promotion for you and all you have to do is make the stuff. That's not really how it works as far as retailing goes. Retailers want to carry stuff that's in demand already. They don't want to have to do a ton of work to create demand. Now, I obviously am not afraid to put in the work. I've done that time and time again, but I'm not like the Midas touch. You know what I mean? I can't take a crud product with no recognition and no buzzworthiness and get people excited about it. all I am is kind of a megaphone. So if you've got a good product that people want and you just need to get it out into more people's hands, that's where I can really help. That's what I do. And I have to get excited about it because I'm an enthusiast. I use this stuff. If I can't get excited about it, forget it. I'm not even going to touch your stuff. People send me samples all the time of random products, a lot of paper, a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of different things that have to line up and be really right for it to really have a successful product launch. So, you know, you could definitely go the route of like selling direct on your own site, you know, network through FPN or something like that. You could always look into a Kickstarter project maybe. That would be a little more risky because it's really putting yourself out there. You got to kind of go all in if you're looking to do that. But that would be another route that you could go. There's so many ways to kind of get into it with like very low-hanging fruit these days, not huge investments in marketing and stuff like that. A lot of ways to do it, but it's not like if you build it, they will come kind of thing. You got to put in a lot of work in some different aspects besides just making a product. You know what I mean? And then, okay, so you're asking me, what are the pros and cons of being a small business owner these days? Oh boy, okay. So yeah, pros and cons, you know, pros, the pride, freedom you get, freedom to do whatever you want. Really, it's not that free. It's just you are free to take chances, you know, on the ideas that you have to try and live out the things that you feel very passionate about doing. Ultimately, you're responsible for what is the demand for whatever you're offering. Are there people out there who want what you have to do? You got to go find those people. So there's a responsibility that comes with that freedom. You know, nobody's going to pay you to sit in your underwear and watch cartoons all day. I mean, props to you if you can figure out a way to monetize that. But, you know, so there is a responsibility there. But if you have an idea and you really believe in it, you can take after it. Like me, I said, I need to get videos done in the fountain pen world. I'm going to do that. I believe there's demand for that. I started doing it. It took a while to get people turned on to that idea. But now it's to the point where it's like, yeah, this is like really a proven thing. I'm going to keep on doing this because it's really beneficial to people. And then let's see here, what else? Potential to make good income, sure, is always a possibility with your own business. Always a huge potential to fail to. Fulfillment in your work, you know, you get to do something for your customers. You get to directly interact with them. That's extremely fulfilling. Diversity of tasks, if you like that kind of thing, you get to do a little accounting, get to do a little marketing, get to do a little product development, get to do a little, you know, networking, like all these different kind of things. So if you like to be busy and like to have wear a lot of different hats, that's a really exciting part of starting your own business. Focusing on your strengths, especially maybe not so much in the beginning because you have to kind of do everything, but once you kind of learn what you're really good at doing, you start outsourcing things, getting, you know, help from contractors, whatever, or bringing in other people, hiring people who have strengths that balance out your weaknesses. So ultimately, the goal is to spend most of your time doing things that are really effective, that you really love to do, and that you're really good at doing. That will be kind of a key to success. So that's kind of the goal to ultimately get there. And then job security. You know, if you're working for somebody else, you could get laid off anytime because of a variety of reasons. You never know. If you're working for yourself, at least if you're honest with yourself, you can usually see the writing on the wall when something's not working. You can adjust something, take out a product, try and get in a new thing, take on a new venture. You have a little more control of your fate, sort of. However, a lot of small businesses fail, and a lot of them fail for some very simple reasons. A lot of times it's accounting and poor money management. Sometimes it's because you're not realistic about what the demand is for what your skills are, or you're not realistic about how good you are and maybe what you have to offer, how crowded your market is, and so on. So it's a lot of, probably the biggest pro and con at the same time of having your own business has to do with you have to really know yourself well. You have to be very confident about what you are, very realistic, very objective, and you have to really capitalize on your strengths when you're working in a business for yourself. Because if you are not realistic with yourself about what you're good at doing and what the demand is for what you're doing, that ultimately is not going to work out very well for you in your business. Some other cons, you know, you're going to work long hours. You're going to take financial risk. You're going to take, you know, possibly some other risks too of your health and sanity and stuff like that. You know, it's just hard freaking work. You know, there's no guarantee. If you're working for someone else, there is somewhat of a guarantee. You know that if you show up on Monday, you're going to get paid. Usually, you know. as long as your company's healthy. But as long as you're kind of just doing the job, you'll be there. You know, generally you'll get a raise in the future as long as, and the expectations are pretty well laid out for you. There's security in that, there's safety in that. And that's why most people end up in those kinds of jobs, is for that security. When you're working by yourself, man, you never know. You just never know. It could be up, it could be down. You know, even here, it's like, we don't deal with huge government contracts or corporations or anything. Everything we do at Goulet is to individuals, you know, so, which is great and frightening at the same time, because it's like, I don't have any like one client that I can go and schmooze and give me some kind of security or whatever and for my future. It's like every day I got to bring it, so that I am adding value to every single person. Like, we have to really be on, we have to be awesome and have a great experience for every single person that buys from us every single day. There is a certain amount of energy that it takes to kind of keep that up. You know, whereas if you're more in like a B2B kind of situation, you can kind of, you know, get ready and do a huge presentation and really be on for when you're working with that client, and then you can kind of go back into your hole and crawl and do all your work and whatnot, you know, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, as long as you deliver. But, you know, for us in this kind of situation in B2C, you're really, it's like, whew, you got to be on all the time. So I don't know. For me personally, the pros definitely outweigh the cons, but that's because that's how I'm wired. For a lot of people, they don't really know what they're getting into when they start their own business. And actually, a phenomenal book that I really like a lot is called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. That, if you're looking to start your own business or you're thinking about doing it, the concept from his book that he has is basically like there's three personalities in every person. There's an entrepreneur, a manager, and a technician. And he says the reason that most businesses fail is because the technician, the one who likes to actually do the work and doesn't like to be told what to do, ends up kind of rebelling and starting their own business based on their own competencies, which is fine, especially if you're a freelancer. That's fine because you're doing the technical work, you're very self-reliant. Problem is, if you're trying to actually build a company and you're a technician, you're gonna have a hard time because you're not gonna be able to stay in the technical work forever. You know, me, if I was really passionate about packing orders and handwriting thank you notes and stuff like that, I don't do that much of that stuff anymore, almost ever, just because I've got a lot of other responsibilities now. I'm hanging on to shooting videos though, because that really adds value, you know, and that's something that like I'm good at doing, I like doing it and so on. But, you know, for other things around here, if I was really trying to hang on to some of this technical work, it would hurt my business because I would not be spending time leading and setting vision and being strategic about goal setting and financial planning and stuff like that the company really needs from me as the visionary one if I was stuck in the technical work. So that's a really good book. I definitely recommend checking it out. Gosh, I still have more questions and I got 10 minutes. Okay, cool. Let's see. Whew. That was good. I like those kinds of questions. And actually, if you want to hit me up on Twitter, at Brian Goulet _. That's my personal Twitter handle. I'm using that a lot more. Ever since I went to Business Gets Personal last week, I've been like fired up about Twitter. I don't know why. I got the connection. I was in the taxi cab on the way to the event, coming from the airport, and I got Gary V on Twitter. And he's like, he's my hero. He's got like almost 1.1 million followers on Twitter. It's insane. But I was on there and I was tweeting back and forth with him about something about wine, you know, because there was a wine tasting thing as part of the event. And I was like, oh, I don't really know anything about wine. And he's like, oh, let me get your free shipping code from Wine Library. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. You know, so I was like tweeting back and forth with Gary Vee in the cab in New York. And I was like, oh, I get Twitter now. Like, this is cool. I was like, this must be how people feel when they tweet with me. Like, I need to be on Twitter more. So, you know, it was just kind of cool. Not to say that I'm Gary Vee or anything like that. But for a lot of you who watch this and are like really like, you know, it's interesting sometimes because like when I run into people like face to face, they're like, oh my gosh, you're Brian, you're in the videos and all that. And I'm like, it's cool. I'm just like a normal guy, you know, it's like whatever, but I don't know. It's kind of cool. So Twitter for me is like really accessible, you know, and so I'm trying to be on there a whole lot more. So, you know, hit me up at Brian Goulet _ on Twitter. Anyway, next question, March R on Facebook. Okay, so I have a question on ink cartridges. How do you know which cartridge will fit in your pen? Okay, your question was actually longer than that. I cut it down because that was the guts of it. But yes, so there's a cartridge out there called the Standard International. It's really not a standard for everybody. A lot of pen companies will have proprietary cartridges. It is a little confusing, okay? And if you'd like to use cartridges specifically, one thing you can always do is look on the product page, you know, especially if you're on gouletpens.com, we always try and put that on there, you know, the type of cartridge that's used on there if it takes one. Not all of them do, like piston fill pens and vacuum fillers and stuff. They don't take cartridges. So sometimes if you can't find the information on there, it's because they don't actually take cartridges. But if they do, we usually try to put it on there. Another little kind of handy tool reference guide thing that we put together was the cartridge converter guide. So go search for that on the Goulet Pens site. And you can see that we have, at least as much as we know, the things that we carry and some of the other things that we are familiar with, at least, we have a guide for what the brand is and what type of cartridge or converter is used in that pen. So that is probably the best reference I have. I looked for like a comprehensive guide on FPN, couldn't find one, but if you know of one, excuse me, I would love for you to post. So leave in the comments, excuse me, if you know of like a different comprehensive resource for a cartridge guide. I just wasn't able to find one. That's why I created my own. All right, Cheryl C on Facebook. I own an Amiki Falcon, fine nib. I've had it about 18 months. By the way, that's being called the Pilot Falcon now. When you bought it, it was an Amiki Falcon, but they're transitioning. Anyway, I've had it about 18 months. I didn't use it as often as I was a little disappointed in the flex of the nib. Excuse me, man, I'm talking fast. Losing my voice. I recently started using it more often and I've noted more flexibility to the nib. Is this my imagination or do nibs develop more give after repeated use? Yes, nibs can break in, especially gold ones. They definitely can break in. So it's entirely possible that's happened. Over an 18-month period, if you haven't been using it very much, I don't know if it would have really broken in that much. But certainly it can break in over 18 months. I've had pens that, you know, have broken in pretty significantly over the first year of use with some pretty regular use. Especially if you're like actually trying to flex it like with that Falcon. I wouldn't go too nuts because it is a soft nib, but it's not like a true flex nib. I think a lot of people really overdo it with that pen. You know, we get people that send pens back all the time because they sprung the tines, they screwed them up because they overdo it with that pen. You know, there's a limit to it, so don't go too nuts with that thing all the time because if you constantly flex that thing out to the max every day, it's going to get to the point where you ruin the pen. So be careful with that. But anyway, so nibs do break in. With that much time, I definitely think that's possible that it could have happened. What I also think could happen, this is another theory I have because I haven't seen you write with the pen, I really don't know. Completely speculating. But for me personally, I don't know if you just got into fountain pens or what your experience is, but for me personally, when I first got into fountain pens, I was holding my pens very upright. You know, that's very common for people getting into fountain pens because when you come over from ballpoints, you're used to like gripping these things and having to like bear down on the paper and like really get them, scribble with the things and get them to write, and you're just used to that. Fountain pens are very different because a properly operating fountain pen should be able to write just from the weight of the pen as you're dragging it across, so you don't need to press down on it. And fountain pens don't work as well when you have them more straight up. Having them at about a 45-degree angle is usually ideal. Me personally, I held it more upright when I first started writing, and I noticed about 6 to 10 months after I started writing pretty regularly with fountain pens, my pen angle was dropping significantly. I actually hold it slightly under than 45 degrees, just how my hand works. I've got a very large hand, so my fingers are long, so it naturally just kind of settles down. If you got smaller hands, you know, your pivot point here is going to be a little closer, so it's going to be higher up. My fingers are very long, so my angle is very low. And so the ink is going to flow better the lower you hold it, and then it's going to, when you're flexing, if you're flexing with the nib down more, the pen down more, you're going to get more flexibility than if you have it upright. So that, I suspect, could be as much of a factor as anything. It may not even be something you noticed as you've written with it, but it's just a theory I have. Maybe it's total bogus, I don't know, but just wanted to share my experience with you because that might be something that's been a factor. Okay, and then as I'm kind of wrapping up here, I got one more question. From Steve K on Facebook. How many pens do you keep inked up at any one time? What do you think is too many? I.e., do you run the risk of some of them clogging up? Oh gosh, this is like, I feel like I'm pulling skeletons out of my closet here. Well, I've talked about it before. It's not that big of a deal. I don't always practice what I preach when it comes to pen maintenance personally. I usually ink up my pens and let them sit around until they almost dry out. I'm just, you know, I'm very busy, so I'm not always thinking about cleaning my pens out. It happens. I have a lot of different pens. Honest to goodness, sometimes I'll forget that I've inked up a pen and a few weeks go by, or a month or 2 months or 8 months or whatever, and I forget that I ever inked it up, and I go to use it and I'm like, oh, this thing's all crusted out, and then it's a full-on cleaning. I'll be completely honest with you. One of the perks, the benefits of having your own fountain pen company is that there are a lot of people around here that know how to clean fountain pens and that have more time than I do. So I've definitely been soliciting some help recently cleaning out my pens. I have like a plastic bin over here that I use for, you know, getting some help. I just kind of like, whenever I need a pen cleaned out, I kind of stick it over in that bin, and then I have, you know, somebody on my team will come and help and clean it out every week. Hey, you know what? It's something that I resisted for a long time, but I gotta say, it's pretty darn nice. If you had somebody to clean out your pens for you, you would take advantage of it too. I'd much rather ink them up and write with them than clean them personally. But you know, I'll still clean out pens all the time, probably more than most people do. But because I'm using so many different pens, especially if I'm shooting a video and I want to do writing samples, I'm inking up multiple pens, you know, I want to make sure that I am cleaning them out more properly. So yeah, you know, I've been soliciting some help from there, but I don't know, just a little insight into my world. But ideally, you want to clean them out every 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe if you're not going to be using the pen for more than a month, go ahead and clean it out and let it sit there uninked so that you're not having it dry out. But in general, though, I would say I keep probably 10 to 12 pens inked up that I'm using regularly at any one time. I usually gravitate to like 3 to 5 different pens, but I'll cycle through some other ones. And then if I know I'm not going to use it for a while, I'll kind of stick it in my bin and get somebody to help me clean that out. But you know, that's generally it. I would say if you're doing any more than 10 to 12, you're probably just asking for trouble. Because really, you're honestly going to use more than like a pen a day kind of thing. And if you got more than a pen a day and it's several weeks go by, you know, it's just not that practical to keep all that many pens inked up. So there you go. That's it for this week. You know, I'm going to come back next week. Send me another open forum, kind of laid back questions, whatever. Ask them on any of my channels, YouTube, InkNouveau, all that. Love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you know when I have videos that are coming out. That's pretty cool. And then last thing I want to leave you here is I'm going to give you a question of the week. Okay, so I want you to post in the comments to give me your answer about how many pens that you keep inked up at any one time. I'd be very curious to know. So thank you so much for watching this episode. Hope you have a wonderful week, great weekend. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching. Hit me up on Twitter and write on.